Hello and welcome back to ABG Sandal Colliers Investor Day. My name is Hanna Forsgren and I work as an equity research analyst here at ABG. With me today I have Maha Energy and their CFO, Bernardo Gutierrez. Bernardo, the stage is yours.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm very honored to be invited to talk with you guys. Maha is very honored, and I also ask sorry for not being present. So if we can flip the slide here, another one, please. So Maha passed recently through several changes in its management and its board of directors. So just introducing the new management to everyone. So I'm the CFO of Maha. Our CEO, Paulo Mendonça, he used to be the chairman of 3R Petroleum. 3R Petroleum is a $1.5 billion listed company in Brazil, founded by Starboard. Paulo is also a founder of Starboard, which is a private equity firm in Brazil. So he has an extensive experience with the onshore market in the Brazil. Myself, Bernardo, I used to work with important Brazilian investment banks like Itaú BBA and Safra. I also worked with Opportunity, which is a private equity firm prior to Starboard, and within Opportunity, which is one of the major shareholders of PetroRecôncavo, which is also a $2 billion onshore oil and gas company listed in Brazil. I was a board member for 4 years. So I also have a previous knowledge in the Brazilian onshore market. And we also have Alan Johnson, which is our COO. Alan has an extensive experience with the oil and gas market, working already with Glencore, Shell. And prior to Maha, he worked with Gran Tierra. So when Maha bought the Gran Tierra assets in Brazil, Alan Johnson joined Maha. So we can flip the slides. Our agenda here is we're going to cover a little bit of how Maha is today, disclosing the assets and giving some hints on our financial data. Let's go to the next slide, please. So recently, Maha passed through several changes and did lots of transactions in the past 3 months. So by the end of the year in November, new board members were elected. So Starboard, as the new main shareholder of Maha, indicated 3 board members. With that, we changed our management. So I jumped in as the CFO and Paulo as the CEO. In December, we made 3 important transactions. We signed a business combination with DBO 2.0, which owns 15% of 3R Offshore. 3R Offshore are the offshore assets from 3R Petroleum, which Starboard was the founder. We made an important capital raise of $20 million by the end of the year to enhance our capital structure. And we sold Maha's Brazilian assets or Maha's Brazilian company to PetroRecôncavo. In the beginning of this year, we concluded our joint operation agreement in Oman. Prior to that, we had farm-outed our participation in our Oman assets to Marfrak Energy in a 35% farm-out stake. In order to comply and to be in accordance with high standards of governance, we understood it was important. We created a new C-level position. So we brought in Barbara, which is our new chief legal officer. And we also introduced Jacob to Maha as our new head of investor relations, trying to be even more transparent and more in contact with our shareholders and with the market in general. We certified our reserves by the beginning of February. And by the end of February, we sold our Brazilian assets for a total consideration of almost $107 million. With all these changes, which we will try to cover a little bit in this presentation, what's the main orientation, the main strategy of Maha for the future? We want to be a cash flow-oriented company, focusing basically in growth inorganically or organically through M&As, And our target assets should be assets where we can find opportunity to ramp up production and to recover reserves. So our CEO normally says when he talks to the market that we, although being an E&P company, we're much more a P company than an E company, So we prefer much more productive assets rather than investing in exploratory assets. We can jump into the next slide. So just highlighting this timeline, which I just covered, these important changes of Maha in its management and its board of directors, it was really important to introduce this mid to long-term strategy. So Starboard, which is a Brazilian private equity firm, currently owns 20% of Maha. As I mentioned, Starboard has an extensive experience with the oil and gas market here in Brazil. Starboard created 3R from zero, and in less than 5 years, it listed the company. And today, the current market cap of 3R is around $1.3 billion. So we understood that Maha had a similar profile or even a more de-risked profile to try to replicate this of what we did in 3R. As I said, we made this capital increase, and much more than the value, the importance of this capital increase was to bring important new shareholders to the company, important long-only shareholders to the company, Brazilian shareholders, Norwegian shareholders, USA shareholders that believe that we can replicate our successful past track record in Maha. This new strategy of targeting opportunistic assets, productive assets that we can wrap up, can be illustrated in this DBO transaction, right? So with the DBO transaction, we brought into Maha 18.5 million of barrels in 2P reserves and a current total production of 2.1 if we take the 15% stake that Maha owns. The farm out and the joint operation agreements in Oman was extremely important because it gave us the pathway with the local government to start our production, which we believe that we're going to start in 2 weeks. And the divestment of the Brazilian entity gave to Maha the war chest necessary, or in other words, the capital structure, the robust cash position necessary for Maha to look for new assets, new acquisitions. We can jump to the next slide. So if we look into what is Maha today, right? How, as we can describe. With the sale of PetroReconcavo, we're very healthy in terms of capital structure. We currently have the USA assets, which is LAK Ranch and Illinois, which we already announced that we intend to sell them. Okay, we have the Omani assets, Block 70, which we it's quite certain that we're going to start testing production in 2 weeks. And we also have this new Brazilian assets, Peruá and Papa-Terra, which are the assets that belongs to 3R Offshore, which DBO, which was the company we bought, owns 15%. And I think that is important to illustrate here is that if you look to our production profile, Maha sold its Brazilian assets, which currently produce around 2.3 barrels of oil per day, right? Which made Maha with a 2.6 barrels of oil per day production. And we bought the DBO assets, which currently, considering the 15% of Maha stake, makes Maha with a total production of 2.3 barrels of oil per day. In terms of 2P reserves, it's kind of like the same. The Brazilian assets, according to our last certificate reserves, had around 20 million barrels of 2P reserves, and these new assets that we bought have around 19 million barrels. But the beauty here is that we sold the Brazilian assets with a very similar profile to the ones we bought for $186 million, and with the share issuance that we are exchanging with the DBO shareholders, current shareholders, the total price that we paid for the DBO assets, it's around $36 billion. So this kind of arbitrage of assets is what Maha is looking for its future. Okay, and another interesting thing is that these two assets from DBO, or in other words, from 3R Offshore, they were recently bought from Petrobras, which is the state-owned oil company here in Brazil. These assets weren't being developed. So we believe that now, as a private company, with much more flexibility in terms of CapEx, in terms of investing procedures, we can ramp up this production, as you guys will see in some slides. You can pass to the next slide. So the DBO transaction, summarizing it, we paid around $35 million as current market value for 15% of 3R Offshore. It brings to Maha almost 19 million 2P reserves and a current production of 2,000 barrels of oil per day. It brings also a diversification in our revenue share, because one of the assets, Peruá, it's totally gas. It's a gas asset, which brings more stability to our revenue. It's not linked to a commodity like the oil. And right now, the gas market in Brazil is extremely hot. Okay, if we look into if we make a NPV evaluation of these assets, we in a 2P reserve, we price them around, according to the certificate reserve, around $145 million. And what is interesting is that we paid around $35 million. This makes in other words, we're paying 24% of what we understand that's their price, an NPV 10 valuation price for these assets. We can move to the next slide. And I think this slide is quite interesting because it illustrates a little bit how Maha is being what are Maha's net asset value and how it's being priced. So if we look into this first column here, Maha's gross asset value, if we get the 200, we have around $214 million, considering the sale of the Brazilian assets, our 4Q and cash balance, and the reimbursement that we're going to receive from our partner Inga from past costs. If we add the gross asset value from DBO, which is around $166 million, and if we add the NAV from our own money and the USA assets, this makes Maha with a total gross asset value of $405 million. If we discount the debt from DBO and also from Maha, our net asset value is around $338 million. If we get our current market cap priced yesterday, which is around $137 million, adding up with what we paid for DBO, around $35 million, Maha's current market cap Maha's current market cap would be around $173 million. This prices Maha in terms of price to NAV multiple of around 0.51 times. If we get the current Norwegian E&P companies, this multiple, this price to NAV multiple, is around 0.62 times. So there is around 20% gap here that we believe we can cover. And the beauty here is that if we look to the profile of Maha, ballpark of what being priced is cash. So right now, the cash position of Maha, considering the cash position and its future receivable, it's 1.2 times Maha's current market cap. So we do believe that with this cash position and with the money assets and with the way we are futuring future acquisitions, there's a great opportunity to enhance Maha's current market cap. We can go to the next slide. Here, what is interesting is a little bit about DBO. As I said, this was an asset bought from Petrobras recently. So this asset in Petrobras wasn't being how can I say, invested. Petrobras, it was a too small asset for Petrobras. So with simple capex or simple investments or very precise investments, we do believe that we can enhance the production in 2 years in around 70%, going from 2.1 barrels per day today to around 3.6, 4,000 barrels per day in 2025. This, as I said, the NPV of the 2P reserves of these assets, Peroá and Papa-Terra, it's around $155 million. And they are very net cash flow oriented. So in 7 years, we expect to have a total net cash flow of $161 million. And here, considering an average Brent price of $70 per barrel, which makes around almost a $20 million free cash flow only for these assets. We can go to the next slide. Again, please. So if we look, this is just a summary when we see all the Maha's assets, as we illustrated before. If we get the Illinois, which is the first one, the IB, the Omani assets, and the DBO assets, we have a total reserve of 21 million barrels, okay? An NPV, according to McDaniels and Gaffney Klein's certificate reserves of almost $200 million. If we add our cash position and future receivables, it makes a gross assets value, as I mentioned, of $405 million, with a net asset value of $338 million. What is interesting here is that the Omani asset, today, we're starting the production in 2 weeks, right? So we do have a good expectation that these contingent reserves can be transformed, let's say this way, into 2P reserves, enhancing even more our reserves profile. We can go to the next slide. Just some quick hints on the DBO assets, which are new for everyone from Maha. The Peroá asset, which is the first one, it's a smaller asset. It has a 2.9 million BOE reserve. It is composed of 3 basins, of 3 fields, Peroá and Cangoá. And I think the beauty here, like the optionality here, is this Malombe, which was recently discovered. And if we put this Malombe into operation, the expectation is to reach 16,000 barrels of oil per day production. Okay, so there's an optionality there, which is not being priced right now. Can move to the next slide. Papa-Terra, it's a bigger slide. It's a bigger asset. It has currently 15.6 million barrels 2P reserves, only considering Maha's stake. Let's remember that here, Maha's stake here is 15% of 3R offshore. It has an NPV of $122 million. It has a cumulative cash flow of $126 million. And this asset operates through 2 platforms, one floating platform and one fixed platform. So it's very different from the profile that Maha used to operate onshore. This is both Peroá and Papa-Terra offshore fields. Peroá much more gas oriented, and this one much more, or 100% oil oriented. We can go to the next slide. I think here's just to show you guys what we expect in terms of production. Just showing that the graph here, the upper right graph, we're not taking into consideration the Malombe field, which may increase a lot the production. And also, as you can see, the Papa-Terra asset, we have a very good pathway to increase production. I forgot to mention that Papa-Terra, if we look to the whole asset, there's around 2 billion of 2P reserves, which only 2.4% were recovered up to date. So there's a lot of pathway to be recovered. We can move to the next slide. When we talk a little bit about our money asset, up to date, we drilled 6 wells. We're about to drill the 7th well. As I mentioned, Oman today is basically composed of contingent reserve, which we expect to transform into 2P reserves. what is interesting in these assets is that aside from our good expectation of being transforming to a productive asset and enhancing our reserves, if we look to our neighbors, there are important companies that are operating nearby, like Shell, Eni, Occidental, all of them sharing the same basin with similar asset profiles. So this enhances a lot our expectation to have a very productive asset in Oman. We can go to the next slide. Here is just curving up a little bit about US, but I think we don't need to enter in details because US, as I mentioned, IB and LAK range, we're divesting it in a short term. Can go to the next slide. Once more. And I think just to cover the presentation, just giving you some hints on how was Maha last year results. So Maha's, if we consider 2022, we ended the year with $90 million of revenues, $55 million of EBITDA, and a net result of $22 million. But remembering that all of these results majorly belong to the Brazilian assets. So we sold the Brazilian assets. We enhanced our cash position to, as we sold for almost $170 million, $187 million. And if we look to our share performance is very correlated with, the brand performance. So as the brand increases, our share increases. As the brand decreases, our share decreases. But last year, we had important events. We started by reaching Maha's peak production, almost 4.5 thousand barrels per day. We had some issues in our production, and as the Brazilian market is extremely hot right now in the onshore, we had very difficulties to find rigs to perform workovers, to drilling. So our production decreased a lot, but fortunately, at the end of the year, we recovered our production and we ended with that 2.6 barrels per day production. So this basically correlates a little bit with the performance of our share. I think it's this. I tried to cover in some minutes all this transformation that Maha faced on the past 3 months. Hope that I could be a little bit you guys could understand a little bit about what we're trying to do here. Thank you a lot.
Very much, Bernardo. So I will finish up with one question, and that is, what will be Maha's main focus in 2023?
Perfect. Excellent question. So basically, we can divide in two main focus, right? The first one is to find accretive assets where we can, jump in attractive multiples, attractive entry prices, and the DBO acquisition. It's an example of the kind of assets and the kind of multiples that we're looking for. Assets that we can not only pay cheap, but also enhance the production, develop it, because we understand that we have competence and team to develop it. And also, in another pathway, is to develop the Omani assets, which we understand that that it can become extremely profitable. We will know this. We will know if we're in a good direction or not in some days, as we're going to start testing the production. But assuming that the results will come, Oman will also be a focus from Maha, and we expect to deliver profitable results there.
Thank you very much, Bernardo. Time is unfortunately running out, but thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.